next day. I've cleaned everything out and going to start making real progress soon. But I just want to show you guys what's going on here, what I'm planning on doing. Um, it's going to be pretty straightforward at first, and then we're going to try and get into some more fun stuff further down the line with this. So, I've got the spring right here. This is the spring that was in it, clearly warped and awful. And then this is a spring out of a Hatsan Edge. As you can see, this spring is clearly way too long, so I'm going to cut it down a little bit. And I'm going to throw a different top hat I have laying around in there as well. Then I'm going to polish the piston up. Pro tip, all you need to polish is the raised bit at the end, because that's all that's going to be contacting anything. Then I'm going to hone the inside of this compression tube because it's awful in there. And I'm going to do some deburring on this guy as well. I might even just like cut it and put a different spring guide in there because this one's not really going to work with the larger diameter spring. There's a lot of play in there and it's not really going to do us much good. I'm going to try and find a larger diameter spring guide that I can fit tighter onto this spring. By the way, I tried a HW97 spring. It's just a little bit too wide and it won't fit inside the piston. So if you're trying to do something like this, don't use that spring. Additionally, I ordered replacement seals. I think all of the bad stuff that was in the gun and why the caulking effort was so terrible and gritty and why there's any dirt in this gun is because this seal is deteriorating. So unfortunately I wasn't able to find a leather seal adapter to a plastic seal that I knew would work, but I did find replacement leather seals, so I'll just replace them every few years or whatever. But yeah, that's it so far. Well, I've polished up the piston, and it doesn't look good at all. This is normally how cheaper pistons come out. I did a couple very cheap pistons, like on a low-end Hatsan and Crosman, very early on when I was starting to polish stuff, and those came out really, really poorly. They didn't look good at all. And I always thought it was me, even though I'd spend hours and hours and hours on it. But what it is it just the surface is so uneven, and they're just very, very small, just holes like pitting almost, where the bluing, the finish just gets much further into the metal than in other spots because it's so uneven and the metal is so impure. At least that's what I think. That it's hard to get a really nice, good polish without going in and taking a lot of material off. So I can't really get a nice looking polished piston, but that doesn't matter because I'm never going to be seeing the piston anyway. So as long as it's smooth, and it is, there were some weird just machining marks almost, I don't even know what they were, that were definitely going to be causing some issues, and I got rid of those and just polished the whole thing to 600, which isn't very high at all, but I don't think going up to 1200 or 2000 or whatever would make a difference. So that's done. It doesn't look good, but that's not my fault. And then I've also got the inside of the cylinder honed. Let's see if we can't get a light on that. So you can see, again, you can definitely see the markings from the relatively low grit of that hone, those honing stones. but it's not bad. I don't think that in a gun like this you will see an advantage from going higher grit on any of this kind of thing. But yeah, so those are the two big things we wanted to get done today. Well, two of the three. I still need to cut the spring, which I'm going to be doing next. So yeah, definitely a lot of stuff going on here and making good progress. The gun's definitely going to be shooting well. Another few hours have passed, and I have a general mock-up for what I want the internals of the piston to look like. At least most of them. So here is the spring guide and the original spring, just for reference. And this is terrible and awful for so many obvious reasons. It's wicked loose, spring's bent. Why is there so much plastic here? It doesn't make any sense. So we're going to be remedying most of those problems. Number one, getting rid of that crappy spring, which I already talked about. So we've got this other spring cut to length. Here's the bit that I cut off of it. And here's the end. I ground it down to get it somewhat looking good. I tried to press that sharp end down into the next coil like you see on most factory springs, but that's hard to do. As you can see, I got the heat gun out and I was heating it up and I had it clamped down, compressing that coil for quite a while. I left it for like 3 or 4 hours after heating it up to around 300 degrees, and that didn't do anything, and I didn't want to go any hotter because that's when you start to get into the point of, at least I think, where you might start messing with the heat treat. And I know that if you mess with tempered spring steel, might not be a spring anymore, and then you'll shatter your spring, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to leave it as is. So this end cap, I'm essentially going to be cutting this whole kind of cross section off right there and replacing it with this little spring guide. This is, I believe, off a 97K. I think it's what I replaced with the Vortec tune kit. So yeah. Now for reference, it fits pretty loosely inside the wider 97 spring, but it fits very, very snugly inside the Hot Sauce spring here, which is really, really nice for tuning purposes. And so, take that off. So this is going to get cut off, and then we're basically just going to either super glue or JB weld or whatever. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. This onto this bit right here. And that'll give us a little bit extra preload. It'll give us a little bit longer spring guide so that the spring is more in line for a larger portion of its coils, travel, body, whatever. And then that's all going to sit inside the spring. I'm still figuring out the top hat. I thought I had some top hats lying around. I've been looking, haven't found any. I found some stuff that might work as top hats. Part of an old daisy valve alongside this guy. I don't know. I'm kind of just messing around with stuff at this point. But I'll figure out a good top hat. Hopefully something where it can spin freely. That'd be nice. Yeah, and honestly, for what it is, it's significantly better than what it was. But I think it will actually shoot fairly decently with these internals. Down the road, I'm thinking I might button the piston if this gun's shooting well enough to make it worth buttoning the piston. I think that'd be kind of funny. As well as just to give myself some more practice with that. Maybe even button the compression tube. Who knows? My hot take on doing compression tubes is, I don't understand why people do. Like, I get it, because if you want your pellet gun to, on paper, be completely 100% perfect, then yeah, you should. But at the same time, it's not going to help your shooting cycle. It's only going to help your cocking cycle. And so, if you have other problems, like I do in my cocking linkage, I don't even notice that. So I think that that's something that's like way, like 99% the rest of your gun is perfect. You might want to start thinking about maybe buttoning your compression tube. On this, I don't think it's worth it at all. I also just want to remark how small all the internals on this gun are. Like, this compression tube is like a 2/3 scale model of a full-size compression tube off of something else. It's just kind of bizarre. The spring was tiny. I had a third spring laying around that I should have cut up that was out of an old Gammo that literally just the end of it was messed up. Just this last bit, and then the rest of it would have been perfect, but I think that that's the wider diameter as well, and I don't think that it would have worked. So I'm really, this Hatsan spring is working out really well. Just in terms of fitting this guide really well and then fitting snugly inside the piston. So I'm really happy with this setup so far.